Susan O'Handley has been involved with local Audubon chapters for over 30 years and has served on the board of directors for the Delaware-Otsego Audubon Society since 2012, including 10 years as co-president. Susan also works with the Audubon New York Connecticut Council Board, which is composed of 27 Audubon chapters in New York State and 6 chapters in Connecticut, and serves on the advisory board for Audubon New York Connecticut Regional Office as the chapter representative. She owns and operates a small digital marketing agency in Hartwick, New York. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you, Becky. So glad to see so many people here tonight. I'm going to jump right in just because I know our time is valuable, so I'm going to share my screen. And I thank Becky and Andy for helping to monitor all the pieces and parts here. So, reducing your household carbon impact, I'll jump right in. This is basically a little bit more about me. Becky mentioned most of it to start with, but I do consider myself a climate action advocate. I think it's one of the most critical environmental issues that we will face in our lifetime, and we will certainly leave a legacy behind us for our children and our grandchildren and future generations. And I do believe action is a critical piece of this in order to protect what we have. I have a background in environmental education, spent a lot of years there. Becky mentioned the rest of it. I do want to just point out the quote here, once you choose hope, anything's possible. I think that still resonates very powerfully for me. Because it's hard to find that hope sometimes. And I think it's important to look for it and find it where you can, and know that there are people all over the world that are working on environmental issues and climate, and that's just very, very important. So I'm going to jump in. Why should we care about this issue? I put this presentation together originally for an adult education class in Oneonta this past year. And as I was going through and doing research, I just was bombarded with headlines. So, hottest day ever with climate change as a feature. This was all from July articles. We shattered heat records. Basically, we had the hottest record day in recorded history, and then broke that record the following day. Continuing in July, we basically had storms that came through. This was a particular video of like Rome, New York, right, fairly close to our area, and some of the damages and destruction that came through with some of these storms. 5 tornadoes across the state in July 11th. Was just incredible to be watching this happening in kind of real time as it went through. Tornadoes in Rome and Canandaigua in upstate, July 17th. Basically more deadly storms and a year's worth of tornadoes as a result of the hurricane that had come through in July. And then I thought things would settle down a little bit, and then the headlines just kept coming. Unprecedented flooding, rivers at or above record levels, seeing rainfalls 6.5 inches fell on a July 10th storm, flooding in the Ozarks, Toronto, Canada, New York communities. Like, this is everywhere. Daytona Beach, Florida flooding, Vermont flooding as a result of some of these storms and hurricanes that came through. So it was pretty impressive. And then the end of July, there was a statement from Governor Hochul's office announcing $11 million in emergency assistance in response to some of this devastation that took place kind of throughout New York State. And then we hit August, and Hurricane Debbie came through, and Oxford, Connecticut, and different parts Oxford was one hard hit, Housatonic region in Connecticut, 11 to 16 inches of rain per hour in a system that stalled and just dumped water in this region. Heavy rains, washed out roads, washed out dams. It just kept coming. Steuben County, this is a picture of a home in the aftermath of some of those storms that had come through in August. And then more, there was a desperate need. This is September 9th. Desperate need for disaster declaration and funding. There was something like a $6 billion cost. Steuben County alone, for some of that, basically estimated their repairs in their county only to be around $50 million. Let's see if I can come back here. My clicker is not clicking. September, we all were pretty shocked at what happened in North Carolina. FEMA just came out with a report that said the damage estimated from Helene is a record-breaking almost $60 billion in damages. Hurricane Ida was 2021 hurricane that came through. Homeowners insurance increased 55%, flood insurance policy increased 47%. We've heard about insurance companies not insuring properties anymore and kind of vacating different places. These are things that not only are affecting people in our places, they're also affecting birds. We've all heard the canary in the coal mine, birds as indicator species, and things that the messages that wildlife are telling us. Audubon have their 389 bird species on the brink, which looks at how climate change is anticipated to impact bird populations throughout North America. They have great tools. You can look up your own zip code and see what birds are here and what are in danger as temperatures increase. And then the 2.9 or 3 billion bird study that came out just a little bit before then that looked to over the last 50 years and said we've got a significant decline in numbers of birds. There's just less of them to the tune of about 3 billion. And then articles on the 6th mass extinction. So these are things that are very real. They're affecting people, they're affecting wildlife, they're affecting agriculture. And there's some really, this is food supply, erratic weather patterns causing drought. Basically, we all know dry land doesn't absorb or hold much water. Increases competition from pests and diseases. Competition for water and soil resources, damage to crops, flooding and excessive precipitation, and then excessive heat, depleting surface water, aquifers, and disrupts the whole cycle for flowering, pollination, etc. And then we look at the health impacts, air pollution, allergens, heat stroke, heat illnesses, drought, environmental degradation, and forced migration, wildfires, we've certainly seen that, living conditions, vector ecology. So like all of these things, and then umbrellaing all of it are mental health impacts because it's high stress, high anxiety, post-traumatic stress, like people who are devastated by some of the weather events, they're struggling to cope. So we're right about in the middle of this graph here, 2025. We are at the breaking point. We're either going to maintain with cutting our emissions, maintain this 1.5 degree mark, or we're going to ignore it or not work towards it and end up with worse and worse factors that are going to impact us and our communities and our neighbors in years to come. So if this year was an example of where we are now, then I can only imagine if we don't take action, what potentially we could be seeing in the future. So what we can do, this is part of what I want to focus on this tonight. And one of the things that I often hear is that, well, like it comes from industry, like the biggest impacts come from industry and, large scale corporations. Basically, transportation, this is kind of a breakdown of the greenhouse gas emissions in carbon ton equivalents based on that end use sector. So residential and commercial impact is about 30%. Industry is a little bit less, actually. Transportation is a big number, and then agriculture also contributes. Basically, households, our businesses, our homes do have an impact. And one person taking action in their one home probably isn't going to be significant, but I think the time has come to where we all have to do what we can because it's important, as we just saw. So in 2020, we did a webinar series on climate action, and there's a presentation that's online in our website in the webinar section under education. And it's an inside look at radical climate action from a personal or household level. And it's a very good presentation that kind of overviews the issue, gives you some of the background of where we are now, and then comes into some of the things we'll talk about tonight. But one of the primary takeaways from that presentation for me is the wheel of misfortune. And basically what it is weather is always iffy. It's always a game of chance in some ways. You can't predict what the weather's going to do tomorrow. Even with all our technology, we can get a pretty good idea of it. But with these massive weather events that are happening now, the question is going to be, are the chances of it being something devastating greater than the chances that they won't? So the wheel on the left basically are things that are much less, your chances of hitting those devastating factors are much, much less at 1.5 degrees, where when we move into a 2-degree scenario, the chances of having the bad things happen are significantly increased. And certainly it's a exaggerated view, but I think that's pretty much the point for our future. So that program was produced by Cure 100 and Shandu Viswasvarya. Basically, he came to do presentations for us and for Audubon chapters. And Cure 100 is the group that he works with down in the lower Hudson, mid to lower Hudson region in New York is where they started it. But it's Communities United to Reduce Emissions 100%. And I believe they've changed their time frame from 2030 to 2040, but I think I think people need a little bit of time to wrap their head around kind of how to go about some of these things. So in the program, basically what's nice about it is it's broken down into these 7 different areas where we produce carbon within our households and within our lifestyles. So electric use, our transportation, our building heat, our food and waste, goods and services, zip code overhead, which is basically your municipal buildings, the buildings in your community, your public buildings, your town, your library, your schools, and things like that. So moving forward over time, the goal is to incrementally step down on our carbon input until we get to a point of having little or no impact. And certainly you can see on the right side here where it has offsets, it's probably impossible to have zero, net zero to attain that. But if you're at a small enough level, you can get there through carbon offsets and basically making a donation to plant X number of trees to help neutralize that impact. So we have on our website, this is our homepage, a link up here in the upper right-hand corner for the carbon tracker tool. And that's part of what I want to review with our group here tonight. The carbon tracker, it's that little green C in the top website, and you can get there just by clicking that. It'll take you to a page. It'll tell you a little bit more about it. You can view the privacy policies and things like that. But I think it's a really good tool. I think it's very useful. This is a screenshot of my own personal carbon tracker. So when I log into my account, I'll get to see where my carbon is currently and kind of where I need to work. But I do want to take time and kind of go over some of this with you and some of the ideas and resources that are available here. So I'm going to access the community carbon tracker here. It will log me in automatically. And I'm going to, on the top, basically, once you set up your profile and you start logging in some of your data about your own household, it will start to give you guidance, and you'll be able to see some of the guidance and results. And you can also look at your particular carbon footprint and kind of where we are. So I'm going to go to my carbon just so that we can see some of these areas. I can see my carbon trend. I can go to the expert carbon consultant. So I'll actually just click on that here to show you. And basically this tells you how are the numbers here determined, why are things in a secondary low impact table, and a little bit of video on how to understand this page. And this page basically will show all of your carbon by different aspects: transportation, heating, gas, cooking, electricity, food waste, etc., and then give you personalized recommendations. But I'm going to go to each section, and I just want to review a little bit here with you, because these are the things that you can do at home, and that might help you in your household, kind of your way of thinking. And I love this because it will show you in transportation ideas that may help you. It's broken out into what are some low cost and low effort things you can do. So for transportation, combine your errands into one trip instead of taking multiple trips, drive less distance. Consider grocery delivery, because it may actually be less carbon intensive than going to a store for groceries and back. Carpooling, and we have some great community boards locally where people will say, you know, I'm going to Albany. Does anybody need anything, or does anybody else need a ride? Things like that are really important. I'm not sure that rideshare really has the kind of impact in our area as it does in a little bit more populated regions of the country. But public transportation, encouraging everybody really to walk, bike, or carpool when you can, idling your vehicle. So these are low cost, low effort things that you can do to help lower some of your carbon impacts. And then it will go into medium cost, medium effort. Walking or biking can improve your health, reduce emissions. And if you want assistance with pedaling, maybe consider an electric bike. Our rural roads aren't necessarily great for biking, but certainly if you're in, some of our more community areas, that could certainly be something very viable. Look at carbon when you plan a vacation. How are you going to get there? What kind of car are you going to rent when you're there? Can you use ground transportation? Can you do shuttle buses? Offsetting your flights, and most flights have carbon offsets at this point. You can purchase a carbon offset along with your flight package, And if you're traveling for business, you can often deduct those expenses or submit them for reimbursement. A lot of companies now, that's a valid expense from that. Combine multiple trips into one. And then high cost and high effort. You know, if you're doing, looking at like a backup generator instead of getting diesel or fuel powered propane, consider something that has battery backup so that we're taking some of that stress off fossil fuels. Zero carbon light and medium duty transportation. When you're in the market for a vehicle, you know, give carbon a seat at the table. And I really love that, the way they term that, because it's allowing our thought process to really look at carbon when we're making some of these decisions on where we want to go. A hybrid car is a great first step. A plug-in hybrid is basically a better step. It offers, you know, this particular model offers 30 miles purely electric, which if you're just driving around town can accommodate that. And then if you have longer trips, you've got a traditional gas vehicle. And then battery electric vehicles, which completely eliminate the need for gasoline. And then there's also graphs that they'll give you, and there's links, you know, how the rebates work, blog article content. So really very comprehensive look at all of the different things. Heating and cooking, I'm just going to review some of these. And basically low cost and effort, keeping space around your radiators, making sure your chimneys, you know, chimney flue is closed, signing up for maintenance plans so that your equipment can be as efficient as possible, your storm doors, storm windows, consider a biodiesel mix for your fuel oil if you have an oil furnace. So those are all low cost. And then medium cost and effort, basically schedule for an energy assessment and find out about your insulation and how well it's doing. Smart thermostats, things that will automatically turn off your appliances at night. Basically the phantom power, and I think that's mentioned in the electricity area, but you know, your appliances draw power even when they're off, as long as they're plugged in. And I saw recently they're selling outlets that have on-off switches, so you can actually just turn it off at the source and eliminate some of that phantom power. Electrify your home's heating and cooling, and this is definitely higher cost and effort, but basically looking at electrifying your heating and cooling systems, trying to bring that big chunk down a good step. So air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps. I do have a graph someplace, but I don't think I shared it in this video on like the efficiency factors of the different types of heating that we have, that we use in our homes here in our area. What to do if you need to retrofit, etc. So coming back up, I'll pop into electricity. Talked a little bit about that phantom stuff, phantom electric, but basically electricity, the goal is kind of in two different sections. You want to use less electricity, and you want to use the electricity that you do use from green sources. So low cost and effort, sign up for electricity supply from 100% clean green energy services company, or an ESCO. And community solar programs, and I recently found out that there is one that is currently being offered. They're open for enrollment now in Oneonta. I'm not sure if it's the city or the town. I think it's the city, basically. And if anybody's interested in that information, I'll make sure that I find the link so that you can get that information. Phantom power, turning off things when you leave a room. I mean, we've been doing some of these things for ages, but it all helps. Consider washing clothes in cold water. For most loads, it's perfectly fine. Turn off your heated dryer setting in your dishwasher. You run it at night, they're dry by the morning. When you empty the dishwasher, you really don't need heated dry. Monitors on TVs, computers, and sleep timers. I did see somebody just raise their hand. Pop it in the question answer section if you could, just so that we can hit on those as we go. Because I'll finish up fairly quickly here. So use timers for your appliances, electric. Take shorter showers because then you don't have to heat as much water. So a lot of these are very logical, but sometimes we forget. And then medium cost, switching all your lighting to LED bulbs. I think we've been doing this for a while. I don't think incandescent bulbs are really available that much anymore. Try to go Energy Star if you need to replace appliances. Consider clotheslines or clothes racks instead of using your dryer. And then higher cost and higher effort, basically look at opportunities for solar. The state is going, I'm sure, to continue their rebate programs regardless of what the federal government does. And there are some good resources out there where you can learn about what opportunities are available. And I'll have a link at the end that I'll share with everybody for that. I'm going to pop back up here and just go to food and waste. One of the things that low cost, low effort, one of the things that we did as a household, we're a family of 4, we made a very intentional effort to do at least 2 nights a week of meatless meals. And it was a little difficult in the beginning for us, but it's become something that is just part of our week. And we found some really great recipes that we never knew existed, and we just are enjoying that and reducing that carbon impact that comes from meat in your diet. Reducing food waste, reducing the amount of trash you produce, recycling as much as you can, avoid goods with excessive packaging. I know there are stores that will sell in bulk. You bring a container, you weigh the container, you add your dry goods, and then you pay for the food, not the packaging, which is really wonderful. Medium cost and effort is, adopt a fully vegetarian diet. I know a lot of people already do this. Compost your food scraps, avoid single-use plastics, and then higher cost and effort. I'm going to cut out all animal products. You can try a vegan diet, definitely plant trees, and join community gardens, etc. So that's the section for food and waste. And again, there's links and things all through a lot of this content. Goods and services, basically every buying decision we make has a carbon impact. When you make your purchasing decisions, give carbon a seat at the table. Buy less carbon intensive goods and services. So I think these are really good things just to keep in mind. Tips that help you reduce carbon, low cost, low effort, buy local, so that your goods don't have to travel as far and you're supporting local farmers and local services, local stores. Buy sustainable brands for clothing, maybe spending a little bit more, but having something that lasts for many years. Recycle your textiles, basically. Plan your meals and shop so that you can minimize food waste. So those are easy things. Medium cost, medium effort, avoid single-use plastic. When you get things to go, tell them not to give you plastic utensils. Reuse plastic utensils, bring them home, wash them, use them again. No napkins, you've got them at home, no straws. Bring your own carry-out container when you dine out. And that's just one less piece of plastic going into the waste stream. Buy appliances Energy Star label, and then higher cost and effort here, follow the money and divest from funds that invest in fossil fuel companies. So use your purchasing power. I know a lot of municipalities did this quite some number of years ago here in Otsego County, basically where they, people looked at where their money was being held and trying to find out, are they fossil fuel engaged, and to switch that money into other funds. You can do that with your banking as well. Check governance scores, environmental, social, and governance scores for your investments and your 401ks, et cetera. And then lastly, zip code overhead. Basically, this is not something directly that your household can do, but we all live in communities. We all take advantage of and use public spaces and services. If you can join a sustainability committee or a local environmental organization, that will help. But look at these same issues on behalf of your community and see if we can bring some of those pieces down. So what I would love to see is after this program, people actually log in here, set up their profile, and start taking the questionnaire. And I will offer that if anybody gets stuck or they need help, to definitely reach out to me. I am coming back to the presentation part now, where I'm just going to finish up here with a little bit about my own carbon journey. Where we started in 2020, our carbon impact was almost 60 tons per year for our family of four. In 2021, we switched to a fully electric vehicle. It was just before the gas prices escalated. So for once, we timed something like really perfectly. And we immediately dropped a good chunk of our carbon impact at that point. And an EV, basically, the information that I have is that it takes about a year of driving the EV. After the first year, it's basically net carbon. So there's carbon that is emitted during the process. But after a year, you're pretty much net carbon from that point onward. And then in 2022, 2023, we updated our home infrastructure and did a lot of work and took out this big 23.33 chunk from our household. And we've made some modifications here and there, and we're now at about 25 tons per year for our household. So knowing that number, we know we still have work to do, but we're in the process. For our particular program, I'm just going to go over basically, we had made the decision at the end of 2021 that we were going to do this. It was just very unsustainable. Our home was very uncomfortable. There were a lot of issues that we needed to deal with if we were going to stay in this area. And we talked about it and said, okay, if we're going to stay, then some things have to get upgraded in our home life so that we can handle being here. And then in June of 2022, I got this budget bill from our fuel oil company, which told us that if we paid right now up front, we would have a cap on our fuel oil cost and services that would put us at a little over $11,000 a year if we pre-purchased it all in advance, which we couldn't do. So basically, we were at the mercy of the market, and if not doing that, our estimated annual expense plus the service and maintenance on the equipment put us at about $15,000 in estimated cost for that year for service. But we had already made the decision, so we looked at this and kind of laughed and said, this is why we're doing it. We did a lot of research. NYSERDA, Mohawk Valley Economic Development Office on climate programs, has some great resources, and Amanda is the person there to speak with. I have her contact information in my resources file. Single residence programs, family residence home energy efficiency programs. These links are all in that research document as well. But we looked at all of this and said, okay, where do we fit in this? What can we qualify for? NYSEG had their clean heat rebate program, and we also looked at loans and what loan rates were at that point, and should have locked in those interest rates back then. The work, in order to do the insulation and to get the heat assessment for our house, we had to replace our roof, which we ended up taking off right down to cedar shakes, the original cedar shingles, and 3 layers of asphalt. It was a much needed project. It was traumatic being in the house when they were doing this, but it was so well worth it, and we're glad that we did it. And it wasn't a direct energy related project, but it needed to be done in order to do the rest of it, and we knew that going in. Our heat pump hot water heater, we had radiator heat that was combined furnace, oil burner furnace with a hot water heater integrated into the system, and it was terrible. I mean, we would get cold, hot water for, a couple of minutes, and then it would go cold and take like 20 minutes to heat back up. It was painful to live in. We did an energy audit. We did a full kitchen renovation, which was not energy related, but in order to qualify for the insulation work, all of our appliances had to pass tests, and our old gas stove failed miserably. So we refused to replace the stove and not do the kitchen entirely, which was much needed. We did insulation, 14 inches at loose fill in our attic, which required us to box all of our knob and tube wiring, because rewiring the whole house was not an option. We did knee walls, spray foam with loose fill above that. We did our basement rim joist walls, and we did window inserts. We caulked, we sealed wherever we could. We brought our heat load from 115 BTUs down to 84 BTUs, which was pretty significant. And then we later learned that our furnace was actually rated for, somewhere around 84. And that's probably part of the reason why we suffered for 20 years in the cold in our home. We did air source heat pumps. We did a 7-ton, 7-zone system, and we did a 12 megawatt solar. Going into the costs, basically, our total costs for all the energy related updates that we did to our home were a little over $100,000, but the rebates brought that down by $36,500 for a net cost of about $66,000. But when you look at what our annual energy expenditures would have been without those, $16,500 a year when you combine electric and fuel oil, after those updates were done, after studying this now for the past several years, our total energy after retrofits are about $5,500 a year. And once we have the solar loan paid off, that's going to reduce by almost $2,000. So on that overall, we kind of gasped and said, really, how are we going to do this? But then we looked at that month-to-month piece and said, this is going to actually be much, much better for us. And result is much better quality of life in our home. We can get up in the morning and not like shiver and be freezing trying to find, clothes for the day. We have hot water that works, energy efficient appliances. I have a dishwasher, which I'm really grateful for, countertops and cabinets, and month-to-month savings, and we even get air conditioning in the summer. So basically, what do you need to get started? Just educate yourself. Definitely do the carbon tracker thing. Energy cost calculations. If you want to do something more major, do some research. What's your budget? What's your cash flow, credit score, all that stuff. Protect your personal data, and there's a link with resources, and I'll put this in the follow-up email when I send the link to the video. That is it for me, and then I'll move to any question and answer comments and things like that if we want to share. I would invite you, if you're interested in continuing this kind of conversation and sharing your resources and expertise, things that you've learned along the way, because we're all in this together, and I think it's a community thing. You can definitely reach out to me at the DOAS email address, and I will basically reach out on how to potentially follow up. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if we have any questions or anything that we can clarify. I know a couple people had raised their hand in the chat.
Yeah. Well, Susan, thank you for that. It was a great presentation. I especially I thought valuable was your personal journey through this, and the great outcome you had. And if there's anything that I think can encourage us, it's just to show that someone has done it and can do it, and there's no reason really why the rest of us can't do it, at least to some degree. So
Yeah,
thank you for that.
thank you very much, Andy. And I will say it was a lot of stress to go through it, but there's a lot of benefits. For our whole kitchen renovation, we did like 90% of that work ourselves. And we had an electrician, we had a plumber, we had somebody do the floor and everything else. I mean, we took everything down, 7 layers of wallpaper off our walls. It was incredible. But the protect your personal data was something I learned after going through the whole process, because our financial information was everywhere. And I don't know how it got out, but we ended up with identity fraud issues. Didn't lose any money, but we caught it quick enough. And I learned to freeze your credit, unfreeze it when you need to use it. If you need to apply for something, unfreeze it, freeze it back up. Unfreeze your credit with all 3 agencies, and also freeze for checking, because people can open like bank accounts in your name, and that doesn't go through the credit agencies. It's a different entity. Yeah, so learned a lot.
Good advice.
I have a question. Did you have a challenge finding the skilled workers to implement your plan?
Yes, and part of the challenge is we did a lot of research. So many contractors do not have websites, so you go by word of mouth. I find the people with websites because I feel that is more professional. We did research. We found contractors that we really had good experiences with. We had one issue where the contractor subcontracted, and the subcontractor did not do a very good job. And the contractor A basically worked it all out. They redid the whole thing practically as a result of that. But I would recommend for anybody who does any kind of that work on the heat pump scale, don't expect your building codes inspector to know if something is actually up to code or not. They won't catch it. And I would absolutely 100% recommend that once the work is done, hire a master electrician to walk through the work and inspect it from their perspective and tell you if things are up to snuff. Because the building codes people do not have that. I see Bruce has his hand raised. Do you want to add a question in chat or in the question answer area? Are there more there?
Yeah, there's 3. We've got 3 questions in the Q&A. I'll just start with the first one from Liz Brown. It's actually a informational saying that the city of Oneonta has an open campaign for community solar.
Awesome.
That's the way to take advantage of solar without having it on your own property. She says, look for announcements about public events where you can sign up here. And there's a website address, and it's at the city website, oneonany.us.
Liz, can you put that in the chat? I think everybody is able to see the chat. So if you want to put that in the chat for anybody here that is interested. Oh,
Okay.
there we go. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. John Lawson has a question about recycling, saying that they see their recycling going into the same truck as the garbage, and wants to know if there's a way to assure that recycling is being picked up correctly. If anyone monitors that, are there any good guys or bad guys for recycling in Otsego County?
I wish I knew the answer to that. That has been an issue since we moved here over 20 years ago. We stopped having people pick up our recycling, and we just take it to the appropriate places ourselves. The best you can do in those types of situations is contact the company that you're paying and find out what is their recycling schedule, what is their trash schedule. There are trucks, I think some trucks that do have separate parts in the back. So trash would go on one side, recycling would go in another, and it actually keeps it separate, but I don't know like all the different companies and what their setups are. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, that's a violation of state law, you know.
It is.
Recycling is supposed to be separated from trash. And I would second Susan's advice to take your own recyclables to the transfer station. That's what I do, and it's for free. You take them for free, and you can make sure they go in the recycling bins. And whether they go beyond that is another question, but at least you're getting your materials there.
Yep, and I see John also has a question on loan program for solar and similar to NYSERDA for the mini splits. Let me, I do have resources that are available in links, but I'd have to look up specifically. NYSERDA was definitely a big piece of our puzzle and allowed us to really do a lot. And I see, Bruce, you still have your hand raised. Do you want to pop something in the chat so that we can see that? Or do you want to put it in the question and answer area? You're certainly welcome to email me if it's something that you want to maybe follow up on after tonight. That would be fine.
Yeah.
Well,
that's appears to be the questions. So if there is no more requests for info, yeah, definitely go to our website, DOAS.us, and to learn more about what Susan has talked about tonight. And she says she's a climate advocate and certainly is a good resource for everyone. I see a lot of thank yous coming in. Yeah, there's Susan's ad.
I put my email address in the chat box, so you can certainly feel free to reach out to me if you're interested in continuing the conversation. I can also include that link to my resource file in the follow-up email, which will come out about 5 days from now. It's an automated message, but it will include the recording link in case you want to share any of the information out, or as well as that resource link.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. I think just being here indicates that you have a concern about the climate change, and as we all should. So thanks, and we'll all try to do what we can. Have a good night.
Thanks so much. Good night now.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Night, night. Bye-bye.